Hi, and welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman, your host. I think we have an extraordinary show today. You get a chance to talk to two national level sailors. First, we're going to talk to Matt Cassidy, who's a member of the America's Cup 2020 campaign that participated in the races down in New Zealand. We're going to talk to Matt about professional sailing and his career coming out of Harbor Springs, the effect that Dave Irish had on a lot of sailors coming out of Harbor Springs. But believe it or not, that community of 2,500 has produced more than its share of America's Cup crewmen over the years, which is pretty extraordinary for the Great Lakes. It was a great opportunity to talk to Matt, and I think you'll enjoy the interview. And the second on tap is Connor Corgard, who just happened to win a 470 national championship. We're going to talk to Connor from Milwaukee. He won it this past weekend, and put him on the trail to France for the Olympics in 2024. I think that'll be a great conversation. We then finish up with a little bit of a different segment. We're going to talk to a trio of guys who are involved in the Clinton River Catalina Association. And it's a cruising group that used to be involved with Catalinas. Because of the pandemic and a variety of other reasons, they're kind of doing a membership drive and looking for new members to like to cruise, which is a little different than what we cover here on Great Lakes Sailing, but I think it'll be a really fun conversation. They're looking for members for a cruising organization, and they're going to talk a little bit about what they've done. They've been in existence since 1988, and I think it'll be a real fun conversation if you're not necessarily prone to racing. So we'll bring those guys at the end, and we'll look forward to the entire show, but I think you're going to really enjoy the conversations today. So stay tuned. We'll be back in a second. Hi, and welcome back. We're talking to one of the great American sailors in Matt Cassidy. Matt's a Harbor Springs guy who was a part of the America's Cup, and we're going to get to all of the specifics about your career. First of all, Matt, we're talking to you. You're back in Newport, which is the birthplace, or at least the Mecca Center for America sailing. I'm sure the guys from San Diego would disagree with that, but thank you for taking a couple of seconds and talking to us.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
I want to just, the easiest part is to go back to the beginning. You're a guy who's from Michigan, who's from the Great Lakes, and you sort of made it to the top of the sport. Not many get a chance to go on the hunt for an America's Cup. So I'm going to take you all the way back to Harbor at 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old. You got in a boat for the first time. I'm assuming it's an Opti?
It was actually a Boston Whaler harpoon. So kind of dating myself, but I don't think they've made those things in a long time. But it was at the sailing program in Harbor Springs called Little Traverse Sailors. And that's where, a lot of kids go in like daycare, day camps or something. My parents put me in sailing. No one in my family sails. It was just looked kind of cool. And that kind of is where I got the itch at 8 years old, or whatever the earliest age you can go in the sailing.
We talk about great American sailors, and you don't think of Harbor Springs as being the Mecca for, a birthplace of sailors, but you think about you and Chris Shepler. I mean, there's two guys out of a town of 2,500 roughly that have had a chance to, sort of touch the sky with some pretty good sailors.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, and there's a bunch of other people as well that have come out of that program or that area. And yeah, like I said, I don't know what it is, but it's just a great place to sail. And we've had a lot of really good mentors throughout the years when we were younger that kind of gave us opportunities on other dinghies, or gave us a chance to travel or sail big boats. And that's kind of where we all got our start.
What did you like about sailing, if you can remember back that far? What is it that kept you, sort of intrigued?
Well, to be honest, when I was little, the best days were the days where there's no wind and we got to capsize, swim around and capsize the boats. And then And then we started racing, and then I was like, oh, this is, the competitive edge kind of came out. And once you started doing these fun little races on Friday afternoons, I was thinking this is a lot of fun. And it just kind of kept me coming back and doing it over and over and over again. And every time you lose, it kind of makes you upset. And what can I do to get better? So you're like, I don't want to lose anymore. So you just keep going and going. And that's kind of the cool thing about sailing is no race is ever the same, and you're never going to have the perfect race. So you kind of the striving for perfection is almost impossible, but it's a fun thing to try to get.
You come back and worked with the Little Traverse Sailors in the last few summers. You've done that as just a pilgrimage to back home. One of the things it's been noticeable, we've had this conversation throughout the show, inside sort of sandlot baseball, if you are involved in a junior sailing program today, you're probably being coached 24/7 while you're there at the club. You don't see a lot of kids just getting in boats and going. And you wonder sometimes with that adult supervision, with parents sitting on the side with their chairs, you just said, like, you take the boat out and capsize it, pardon the expression, but grab ass to some extent.
Yep.
There's not a lot of that anymore. Should there be more of that from your perspective?
Well, I mean, yeah, 100%. I think the thing that keeps people coming back to sailing, or what keeps me hooked every day, is the competition and the fun factor. And if there's no fun factor in it, then there's, you see kids get burned out who are, getting coached at a very young age, and it's kind of more like a job instead of something fun. And and some kids, it pushes them to go on to great things and achieve great things in the sport, but others get burned out. So I think that if you can just go out and have fun and let the kids go off on their own and figure it out, I think that's the best way to start. And then, later on, as they get older, if they want to move to that next level, go for it. But I don't think you can't push them to do it. It's something they want to do on their own.
Gary Jobson, in the beginning of this series, said that he was a kid at 12 years old. They would pack the boat. And I don't remember what it was, but it was a small boat. They'd pack the boat in Barnegat Bay, and they would set out for a town 12, 15 miles away. They would sail to whatever beach it was. They would have their life jackets on. Their mom would make sure everything was fine. They'd have their lunch, they'd get in their boat, and they'd sail back. And that was an afternoon, no different than if we went to the baseball field at the elementary school and played from noon until dinner time when the bell would ring, and then everybody would ring the bell and you go home and have dinner, kind of things. And I think sometimes that sort of gets lost in the process. We don't have as much fun with those kids as we maybe should.
Yeah, exactly. Those are your best memories. Or, for Gary, the days like that, he's achieved some great things in the sport and the highest level. And the days he remembers are the days he sailed, when he was 12 years old, sailing out and having lunch and coming back. And I remember the days when, doing capsize drills and throwing buckets of water in your buddies' boats and all that stuff. I remember those just as much as I remember the coolest races I've done. Yeah.
Well, in the beginning, I have to assume we're talking about great sailors. Dave Irish, certainly a harbor icon, was no longer with us. Dave had to have an instrumental part in the development, I would think, of Matt Cassidy.
Yeah, Dave was the number one. So I started sailing through the program there at Little Traverse Sailors, and Dave's sister Ann ran the program, and then she introduced me to Dave, and he had always taken junior sailors under his wing and given them a chance to sail on the various boats, the bigger boats he had. And so I started doing, as a floater when I was, 12 or 13 years old, and then kind of moved up to bow. And, I had no idea what I was doing, and I was horrible, but he just kept giving me a chance, and I persisted, and he taught me a lot of things. And then, I started figuring things out on the bow, and then he started having me as a regular on the different circuits he did. And we went down to Key West, and, going down to Key West as a 15-year-old sailing is, you thought it was the biggest thing in the world. So Dave kind of launched my career, and then he introduced me to other guys. And the cool thing about sailing is it's all about networking, and you try to sail with as many different people as you can, because you just never know where one of those opportunities or those meetings or those races you sail with someone where they come and ask you to sail on another program, and it just kind of branches out from there. But I would say if there was one person, it was Dave Irish, who kind of got me going as a junior, and then Helmut Jan gave me a chance on the Far 40 Flash Gordon, just to when I became a pro, he let me stay on his boat as a professional. And he started paying me, and he was the first guy who gave me a chance in the professional world.
If you're describing Dave, or giving an eulogy to Dave about what influence he had on you sailors, and more specifically you, what do you remember about him that was so human?
I think, well, with Dave, I think he was all about the learning experience, and he just loved sailing. So it didn't matter if we were first or last. He had the same smile on his face. So I think just the simple fact of never get too worked up. It's just a sailboat race, and just learn from your mistakes and get better. And that's kind of I never saw him in a bad mood. And so that was kind of something that I kind of try to take forward with me every day, because at the end of the day, it's not worth getting worked up about. You get upset at yourself, but it's not worth getting real pissed off, because it is a sailboat race, and your worst days on the water are better than most days' best days.
With the exception of a football stadium, with the exception of a football stadium being the steepest stands in the history of high school football in Harbor, I don't know if you can live in Harbor and not smile. It's just one of those places.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like, I was just there this past week doing the Ugata Regatta, and we sailed for 4 days from, we had 25 knots down to 10 knots, and it was, Chamber of Commerce day and waves, and it was 80 degrees. You just can't get any better sailing. We had a couple buddies that we were doing the Super Series over in Palma the week prior, and we all flew back, and a couple of the guys had never been up to Harbor Springs, and they're like, "Hey, where are we going again?" I'm like, they're like, "Michigan? Where's Michigan?" I'm like, "Well, it's in the Great Lakes." And they're like, "Where's Harbor Springs?" And I'm like, "Don't worry about it. Just when we get up there, you just let me know after 1 or 2 days of sailing what you think." And I ran into a couple of them in the morning, and they're like, "Holy cow, like we'd never seen a place like this. It's a very, very special spot." Hope not too many people are watching, because we want to keep it somewhat of a secret.
Right.
But no, it's a really cool place, and when the conditions are on, there isn't a better place to sail.
Are you a typical Michigan guy? You hold your hand up and tell them where you live?
I used to, but then now I talk to people that you put your hand up and they have no idea what you're talking about, because most of them don't know where Michigan is, because they've only been the foreigners, the international guys. You don't really ever come to the Great Lakes. You go to the East Coast, or you go to the West Coast, but the middle of the country kind of gets skipped over.
When you go back and work with the kids, do you notice any difference in the 10 years, 15 years you've been working with the younger kids?
I think, well, I don't know if I noticed the difference in the kids. I definitely noticed the difference in the programs. And I think especially at Little Traverse Sailors, the yacht club, and they've done a great job supporting that group. And the amount of the boats that have, the 420s, are a lot better boats to learn how to sail on. So you can go do some other racing, like on the college, 'cause that's what you sail in college. And I just think that the coaching is always there. So I think that if you want to bring your game to the next level, the kids have that opportunity to do so. But I still see the same smiles on their faces, still doing it, like learn how to tie knots and rig their boats, and the same stuff I did as a kid. They're doing it, and just with the same big infectious smiles.
Yeah. Were you ever on Dave Irish's No Surprise, the 111?
I wasn't on the 111. No,
Okay.
I think the last boat I sailed with Dave was his the Far 30 Surprise. So
I asked the question. Scott Sellers had a very successful couple of races with his daughters.
Yep.
Both double-handed, and then the Chicago race.
Yep.
And then I realized when I started interviewing him for the Ugata that they were second place by a point, and it turns out that your former skipper Terry Hutchinson, an America's Cup icon, is on another boat. And I'm thinking, I'm on the boat with my daughter, I'm sailing against Tiger Woods. That just doesn't seem like it's a fair formula, but I get the point.
Yeah, I mean that's the cool thing about sailing, is you get the chance to go out and play against the Tiger Woods of sailing, and there's not many other sports where you get to do that. Yeah. And I think and Scott is another one of the guys that was had a huge part of my success, and he went through that program, was one of my coaches, and it's awesome to see what he's achieved and his daughters. And I saw him at the party the other night at Irish's, and I just said it's so cool to see him passing on his love of sailing to his kids, and they're kind of following in his footsteps.
You know, we've kind of come to the conclusion that sailing is unique in this sense. You can have a competitive career pretty much your whole life. Best example is they don't shut down Little League in the summertime to take a week off for the World Series, right? And nobody from your town is playing in the World Series. So it becomes a little more obsessive, and most sailors, for the most part, are not multi-sport athletes. Most of the people that sail are so obsessed, they sail, you know, from harbor, you go to Florida in the wintertime. And I think that's a fair discussion. What I don't think anybody understands, if you go to the party you're referring to, you could walk around and know that there's 3 America's Cup guys and 2 professionals. And I'm not sure most of the people would even know that you guys are in the room.
No, there was, I mean, it's funny you say that, because I met a lot of guys, or chatted to a lot of guys there that have those credentials. You know, multiple Volvo Ocean Race winners, America's Cup winners, Hall of Fame guys, and they're just there having a beer, chatting with, and, you know, most people don't even know who they are.
Does the You Gotta Race get the inside the sport? Does it get the prestige, or more importantly, does it get the respect that the 2 MAC races get?
I mean, I think so. I think it's a nice, for the Great Lakes sailing. Obviously, the month of July is your summer with the 2 MAC races, and and I think it gets the respect, and because it's so unique with the Bay Tour races on Saturday, Sunday. Most races we do are windward lewards, and so to come and do a 18 to 25 mile kind of reaching around the bay, I think it's a different format, and I think people like that, because it's not your standard port roundings and just cookie cutter race. It's something different. You never really know what you're going to get, so it kind of mixes it up, and people enjoy that.
In high school, you went to Harbor, I'm assuming?
No, actually, I went to school in Florida, so I spent I kind of 6 months and 6 months. I did Florida for 6, Michigan for 6, but my dad is from Harbor Springs. His family grew up there, owned the local hardware store, all that stuff. And then my mom's family had a summer home there, and they had a shop in town. So that's the Harbor connection. So but when high school started, the schools were different and got too hard. So we stayed in Florida.
Okay. I was going to ask you, if you're from Harbor and you spent some time in the winter, you probably skied, but if you're in Florida, that doesn't work.
So to be honest, I'd never saw snow till I was like 15 or 16 when I went up to Harbor Springs in the wintertime. So I got pretty thin blood until my last winter here in Newport. Last winter was a bit of a shock. It was a nice change, but I was like, man, my blood's thinned out a lot.
Where in Florida?
Delray Beach.
Okay. We have some personal connections of people that we both know from Harbor that you know from the sailing side. I know from the ski racing side. I had coached against Chris Shepler for a number of years as a high school coach. And somebody mentioned one day he was part of the Coke syndicate, and it threw me, because we're in the middle of doing this program, and all of a sudden I get to talk to Chris, who I knew as a ski coach. I had no idea that he even sailed, and it was which goes back to the point of a small town producing some serious talent. From Harbor, and more importantly from Delray Beach, you end up at the College of Charleston.
Yep.
How did you make the connection from high school to college?
So that was another one from sailing in Harbor. We had Adam Lowry's now girlfriend at the time, Mara. She was my coach the summer when I was applying to colleges, and I was going to stay in Florida and go to one of the local colleges. And Mara, she said, "Hey, you should really check out Charleston. It has a great sailing program, and it's a really cool place." And I'd never been to South Carolina, and so we went and checked it out, and of course I loved it. So I applied to Charleston, got in, and so then the next thing, I never really had sailing. I didn't know, because I wasn't great at sailing. I just I was all right as a junior sailor, but we didn't travel a lot, so I didn't get the national exposure. So my goal was just to get on the Charleston sailing team, and I was able to do that, fortunately, and that kind of led to 4 great years on the team, and then kind of kept my love of the sport and going, and gave me other opportunities out in San Diego, and kind of from there. But I never thought that sailing was going to be a job, but the College of Charleston was the 4 years there. The amount of racing you do, and sailing almost 7 days a week was amazing, and that kind of opened my eyes to the whole, the bigger world of sailing and what's really out there. You're in Harbor Springs, you're kind of a big fish in a small pond, and then you go to these other places and you're like, man, I don't feel like I even know how to sail compared to these guys. They're really, really good.
Right.
So it kind of gives you a kind of the bar you think you're pretty high, and then you're like, okay, the bar is way up here now. So I got a long way to go. And so it kind of lights that fire to get better.
I always like to follow the road untraveled. What was your degree in?
Business. I started off marine biology because growing up in Florida as well, diving, fishing, I knew every fish there was. So I thought, oh, marine biology sounds good. But then I had to take way too many classes and way too many labs, and the labs were during sailing practice. So I quickly figured out, like, this isn't going to work. So I asked some of the seniors on the team, like, hey, what are you guys majoring in? And they're like, business administration. So I figured I could use a business degree almost anywhere, even running my own business now. And it turned out to be a great call.
If sailing didn't become a profession, what would a 40-something-year-old Matt Cassidy be doing at this point?
You know what? I have no idea. I have no idea at all. People ask me that, and what's next, and what I'd be doing if I wasn't sailing. And man, thank God it's worked out, because I couldn't tell you.
Is the blindness to a plan B, like any artist, if you think about it, the starving artist who lives in his car because he doesn't, is the blindness to plan B make it easier because there is no jumping off the cliff?
Yeah. I mean, this is what you do. There is no, like you said, there's no plan B. So you got to make it work. And if it's not working, try to identify the reasons why it's not working and fix it. And, whether it's, sailing skill or personality or, just, attitude on the boat, like why isn't it working out, and try to figure that out. And the cool thing is you can get second chances. And I think if you can, fix a couple things, and, everyone likes a hard worker. You might not be the best sailor, but if you're a hard worker, that goes a long ways. If you kind of keep your mouth closed and your eyes and ears open and learn from the guys around you, that goes a long way, because you can copy people. And that's what I did growing up. I've, had the opportunity to sail with a lot of really, really good guys. And I kind of took bits and pieces of each of those guys and what I thought was really cool and what they brought, cool things they brought to the table. And I kind of kept that. And I just, over the years, I've just formed to what I've become is kind of bits and pieces of all those guys, those amazing guys I've sailed with in the past.
Did you sail primarily 420s in college?
Yeah. 420s and FJs.
Okay. Should that change at all, or is that, should the football field be larger than some other field? I mean, I'm changing. We're stuck in this rut at this point. You're involved in foiling, obviously, at the highest level.
Yeah.
We're trying to make foiling a big deal with Sail GP. Yet we're still sticking kids in a box when they're 8 years old and an optimist, and then it jumps from an optimist to a 420. And obviously, there's a huge hull difference and a sailing difference between those two.
Yeah.
And I sometimes wonder if that's a hindrance to the progression, because the rest of the world has moved on from what we're doing.
Yep. No, I mean, yeah, you gotta keep up with the times, I think. And I think the optis are great and it's a good starting platform, but I think if these kids want to go on to the highest level, you gotta give them an opportunity to sail boats that kind of are similar to that. Whether it be the skiffs or the foiling. The problem is it's not a cheap sport, and and the foiling boats are very expensive, and to keep, and it's just, once you buy it, like, the upkeep on the things are tremendous. And if you have a moth, you spend, your work hours of sailing hours are about 10 to 1. So you just don't have the time and the resources to do it properly. And the problem with it, and also another problem is, if you're not doing the foiling boats properly, then it's not worth doing, because it's more frustrating. And if something breaks going those speeds, it's a lot bigger consequences. So I just think you can put some lines on a 420 and you don't have to change the lines, for a whole season. Whereas if you have a faster foiling boat, the maintenance on the thing is crazy. So it just takes a lot more resources to keep it going. So that might be where the kids are stuck in the simpler boats, is just for that reason.
Coming out of Charleston, you at some point have to think about, well, okay, I can now make a living at this, even if it's living in my van at the point to start the process. When
Yep.
did it become apparent to you that you wanted to make this a career?
Well, I guess the summer after I graduated, I was up in Harbor Springs, and we had a family friend who owned J World out in San Diego. And so one of my friends was like, hey, do you want to have lunch with Tom Carruthers, the owner? And I knew he's a Harbor Springs guy. His dad is a Harbor Springs guy. And so the connection there was kind of funny. And so I had lunch with him at the yacht club, and he's like, hey, I got an opening out at the sailing school and coaching racing classes. Would you like to at least come out and check it out? And I'd never been west of New Orleans at that point. So like a month later, I flew out to San Diego, checked out J World, and he gave me an opportunity to work there if I wanted to. So I was like, of course, hell yes, I'm coming out to San Diego. I didn't have another job lined up. And so I packed up the car and drove out about a month later. And so I coached sailing at J World for 2 years. And out there, that was another huge break, is through the J World, connection. I was able to meet Vince Brune and some other, legends in San Diego, and then was able to sail Etchells with Vince Brune and Bill Bennett. And then just kind of same thing. It just kind of branched out, and with those guys, they introduced me to other people, and it just kind of went from there. And that's, you didn't never know where connections are going to take you in this sport. In one day, one simple meeting at the local boat shop could lead to so many different opportunities.
I was a Harbor Island guy. I lived in San Diego for 22 years.
Yeah.
So I was part of the newspaper at San Diego.
Oh.
Anyway, I lived out there a long time. Explain to folks what the bay is like, and explain to folks, more importantly, every day at 12:30, then it comes up 10 knots.
Yep.
And it's the same every day with the exception of Santa Ana's.
Yep.
So you had perfect sailing almost every day.
Almost every day. And the cool thing about West Coast racing or sailing, you don't really do much until after 12 o'clock. So there's no wind in the morning. And so you can either start the racing, you get a little sleep in, or you do your morning planning and exercise or gym or whatever you want to do in the mornings. And then racing starts at 12, and then the sea breeze starts coming in, and you get, 8 to 14 knots every single day. And so, it's a special place. It's sunny almost every single day, with the exception of the May gray and June gloom, but it's still nice. So I think 2 years sailing there, and you could sail 300 days a year or more, and it's awesome.
Just before we left San Diego, I actually switched from Harbor Island and I joined San Diego Yacht Club. So I was a member for 31 days, and I got a job transfer to Florida. Not that it matters, but on the back of my O'Day to this day, which was the boat that I had there, it still says San Diego Yacht Club on the back of my boat, and right below it, it says Crescent. We were involved in the 88 and 89, some of the experiences with Michael Fay and all the races in those days. It's a different community because sailing really exists in San Diego, much like it does in Newport. Not to suggest it doesn't here. San Diego, I think, is a little bit different because you're sailing 12 months a year, and that changes the landscape, because you can go out to your boat, all the time. If you walk through the San Diego Yacht Club, you're going to hit elbows with all kinds of heroes.
Yeah. Mark Reynolds, Vince Brune, Dennis Conner, like the list goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And that's what I remember the first time I was at the yacht club, just sitting there having a beer, probably with Vince, and Dennis came up and just started chatting like he was like, hey, I'm Dennis. I'm like, yeah, I know who you are. It's you're just like, holy crap, this is, you're kind of in a dream. And, that stuff, happens in places like that. And you're like, wow, this is cool. I grew up seeing these guys on TV and in magazines, and now I'm sitting here having a beer with them.
We interviewed Dennis, I think the 4th or 5th or 6th show. And I wanted to talk to him about early San Diego Bay before it was dredged. Mm-hmm. And I never asked about all the controversial stuff. I asked him about the early days of sailing when he lived down the street and his parents couldn't afford to belong to the club. So somebody took him under their wing.
Yep. And
that's how he ended up become a great sailor, because he happened to live 3 blocks from the club and the whole process. But he talked about, the bay, and he was a little shocked that I wasn't interested in all the histrionics of his career, but I wanted to know a little bit something different. And he was very gracious, and it was kind of cool to have that conversation.
No,
So,
he's always ready to talk to anyone. He loves it and sharing his experience and knowledge. And I think that's super cool.
yeah. Okay. So as you're moving up the ladder, so to speak, when do you recognize that you can make a living at this? And what does it take to make a living? At what point do you know that you can support yourself? What age?
So I think when I was doing the J World thing, I was a coach and I was in the industry. So that's when US Sailing had the category ratings of a group 1, 2, and a 3. And a lot of the classes limited the number of pros. So I was an amateur. I started sailing with Helmet Jan on Flash Gordon when I was like 19 or 20. And then because I worked at J World for so many days a year, I was then labeled a pro. And so Helmet gave me the opportunity. He's like, okay, I'll let you, we had to get rid of, I forget, someone left. And he's like, able to keep you on, Matt, as one of the 4 pros. And so that kind of opportunity right there, it kind of got me into the Grand Prix circuit. And those were in the days of Key West with, 30, 35 far 40s. And the who's who of sailing was there. And, Terry Hutchinson, Madrigali, like Mark Reynolds, like all the rock stars, the guys that I knew growing up, or not knew, I read about growing up, were there. So that was kind of my first professional gig. And then I sailed with Helmet for, up until probably 7 or 8 years ago when I joined Oracle in 14, I guess 10 years ago now, or 8 years ago. But when I joined Oracle is when I stopped sailing with Helmet. But I stayed with him for a while, and he was very supportive of me and just gave me massive opportunities. So then through Helmet, I was able to sail and, meet guys and sail in different classes. And after a couple of years, I was making a comfortable living, and parents never had to support me or anything like that after college. And I think once, if you're not getting money from anyone from your family for support, and I was making a comfortable living in cool locations, I thought I could make it. And it just kind of, I'm fortunate enough now to keep it going and still doing the same thing I love.
All right. So now Oracle comes along. Larry Ellison knocks on the door. There was a connection at some point to essentially, I wore my shirt for you so that, how does that whole process come? And let's start about the America's Cup. Kind of walk us through it.
Yeah. So I guess the first opportunity that led from the far 40s, I met people that I've met, Ed Reynolds, who but is the president of Quantum Sales. And Ed introduced me to some guys on Quantum Racing and the TP52 that Doug DeVos owns. And so through that, I was able to get a shot with one of the guys that left to go to the America's Cup. They had an open spot on the boat. So I took that. I was able to get that spot. And then through the DeVosses and through Quantum Racing, some of the guys I met on that boat, one of the grinders, Joe Spooner, was on Oracle, and Rome Kirby as well. He was on Oracle, and I knew him through some other sailing. And they called me like, hey, there might be an opportunity with Oracle coming up for the Bermuda campaign. This is before we knew we were going to be in Bermuda. And so I went down to Sydney and had a tryout with the team. And like I said, everyone at that level is really good sailors, but it was more of a personality test just to see if I fit in with the group. And it was a big international squad, and I'd never been on a catamaran prior to that day in Sydney. So I kind of rode around on the back of the AC 45 and just kind of watched the guys sail for an afternoon. Then they're like, okay, it's your turn. And so you kind of jump in and run around with like a chicken with your head cut off. And then you figure it out, and it just they gave me an opportunity to join the team. And so we moved to, San Francisco for a little bit, and then Bermuda.
We had an opportunity in Chicago to kind of hang around with some of the F-50s and see how it works. You primarily had spent some time as a monohull sailor, as a bowman.
Yep.
In a catamaran at that level, there is no such thing.
No.
So you're a grinder, if nothing else, and you're the tactician, you're the flight box operator,
yeah.
and you're a grinder.
Yep.
So kind of explain that so people understand the difference.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the funny thing is I'm traditionally a bowman, so that's what my career was prior to the America's Cup. So then the Oracle campaign in Bermuda, those boats were supposed to be 60-foot catamarans or 62-foot catamarans, I think. And then once we figured out it was going to be in Bermuda, we realized that the sound was too small for these boats. The boats were going too fast, so they scaled the boats down to the 50s. And there was no, with the 60s, there would be code zeros. And so I was hired as a bowman for those boats. Then we realized there was no bow position. So I just kind of morphed into a trimmer grinder. And I'd never, I'm not a big 6'2", 220-pound grinder. So I just a skinny, scrawny bowman that gets thrown on the handles, and I'd be done before the big guys even started getting warmed up. So I had a huge hill to climb to catch up with these guys and, try to be in the same level as them. And then the same thing with American Magic. We were hired, a couple of us were hired to be the bow team. And then we quickly realized after, a couple months of sailing, or probably a couple weeks of sailing, that there was no bow position on these boats either. There's gonna be no changing head sills and stuff, and code zeros up and down when you're doing 40 knots. It just was impossible. So same thing, you just kind of morph into a grinding position and kind of see what needs filling and try to fit that spot as well as you can. So I'd never thought I'd be a grinder, and I don't have a grinder physique, but
right.
I'm like, what the hell? The cool thing is this is a hell of a challenge, and to get the opportunity to grind against and with the best guys in the sport is super cool. And so, I love the grinding squad, but they kind of look at me and a couple others that, you guys aren't grinders. You're here training with us, but at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to touch us when it matters. And it's kind of fun, funny.
Very few in the sport get a chance to campaign for the Holy Grail. Yeah. Does it hit you as a sailor at some point, pro or not? Does it hit you at some point when you get to that competition and you're finally there? Maybe even in Chicago when you guys came in and did an exhibition kind of thing. Does it get to you, and do you understand something we don't know when you're sailing for the Holy Grail?
I think that once sailing, I knew it was going to be a profession. And I think I had a signed poster from Buddy Melgus on my wall in Michigan when I was a kid. And we went, Buddy was at the yacht club, and I was a junior sailor, and he signed a Senate America's Cube poster or something like that. And that's the cup. I never thought was something I'd do. I just thought it was, the kind of the unattainable. And then once it started getting closer, I kind of set it as a goal. Like, yeah, I think I can do this. And I did. And it was one of those things where you kind of take a step back and realize where you are and what you've achieved. And you're like, wow, this is kind of a dream, and I'm here now, but you still got to perform. And, you can't get caught up in this is a dream. You got to, okay, I'm here, and you can't, okay, let's do as best as we can here and try to win this thing. But it's, it's a lot easier said than done. But I think it was really cool to realize that you make it to the cup and join a team to do the America's Cup. But then once you get on there, then the real work starts, and to actually win it or get to the level to win it is a whole different story.
It's a great job, but it's still a job.
Yeah, at the end, it's a job, and you have bad days and tough days, but you use that as motivation. You can't get too pissed off, and it's all a learning experience, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Were you a part of the big crash?
No, I was on the chase boat. We were Alex Sinclair and I were on the chase boat as the rotation sailors, and we saw them capsize. And on the way up to the boat, we saw a piece of we thought was a fairing floating in the water. And so I went to pick it up, and as I reached in to pull it out, I turned it over, and it was blue. And the only blue on the boat was the hull. And we had one of the designers on the boat who started freaking out, saying, so we got on the radio, because they didn't know they had a hole, because the hole's on the leeward side of the boat. And so we started radioing that the boat was sinking and you guys got major issues. And obviously we quickly realized the extent when we tried to write it, and when it came up, it was below water, or at water level.
The New Zealand fire departments and all of the folks that worked through that have to be given great credit, because it really was going to be a loss. I mean, a major loss.
Yeah, it would have been, if it wasn't for those guys, if it wasn't for Team New Zealand was watching on the TV, and they immediately grabbed all their rescue equipment, their divers, and the most experienced guys for that situation, and came out. So we had our chase boat already tied up on one side, and they came over and tied up on the other. And then the fire department, the police department, I don't know how many crash pumps it would have been in the press before when it happened, but we had 15, 20 different crash pumps from all the teams. Everyone helped out, and it was kind of a whole industry situation. It wasn't just an American Magic situation. Everyone was involved, and it was kind of cool to see. We were just racing against Prada, and we had guys from Prada on our boat helping us save it. An hour later. So it's cool that the community, we're competitors, but we're also friends at the end of the day, and everyone chipped in to help us save that thing and make it to the race course another day.
So that viewers are watching, we should point out that there was a flip of the America's Cup boat in New Zealand during an America Cup race. Am I correct?
Yep.
There's a great video online if you want to go see it, to the point of and one of the things we should point out is that you were using sails. You weren't using wings like they're using now.
Yep.
And how long did it take? It didn't take very long. Did it take what, 24 to 48 hours to put the boat back together?
It was, yeah, a little bit longer than that. There was quite a bit of work to do. We had to, strip the boat out. The boats are extremely complicated with all the electronics and hydraulics and everything on the boat. So what took the longest was getting that section of hull built again. So our boat builders cut out we got it in the shed that night. And then, yeah, over the course of, say 4 days, 5 days, the hull was fixed. Team New Zealand was actually building that piece at their boat building facility. So it just kind of shows the camaraderie amongst the teams. Is our main competition was helping us build the piece that, got us back sailing. And then we got that together, and then we had to put all the electronics and everything back on the boat. So it was a monumental feat for the 7 days we had to get it from crash to back to sailing.
What was the year? I forget the year.
What year was it?
Yeah.
It was the year that it was the summer of the Cup. So 2020.
Okay. I knew it was.
It was the fall, or 2021. I guess we were out in January. So beginning of 2021.
You talk about the camaraderie of sailors, and if you go back, and again, I keep using Sail GP, but it's at the height. They share information. Larry Ellison was smart enough that he owns the boats. He also shares all that information with everybody. So it really becomes the best sailor at the end of the day. If there's nobody able to out-rig or jerry-rig any kind of boat process. If you look at the 52 sailors in the Great Lakes, they're now having debriefs with sailing with all their other information. Somebody like Usual Suspects, as his point was, hey, by the way, you're not, your sail shape on the top isn't quite looking. He looks up and find out that we're sharing information at the highest levels, and we're not. And we had this conversation with Curtis Florence, who's a Canadian Sailor of the Year Rolex guy a couple of weeks ago. We're not sharing information down the line, but we're doing it at the highest levels. And I think the lower level sailor guys can learn something from these things. Certainly the camaraderie.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about the Great Lakes 52 fleet is like Tommy Giesler is kind of very instrumental in that group, and the whole goal is to create participation. And I think and Doug also wants participation in the Great Lakes because that's his home. And I think if it's no fun to go out and get your ass kicked every day, and so I think these guys that are getting beat have an opportunity to learn from the best. And every morning at 9 o'clock for the Great Lakes Regattas, they have a fleet debrief, and any of the teams can ask any questions. And if they want sail shape pictures or crew work video, whatever they want, they can let us know, and they get that. And I think that to be able to learn and raise the bar each day, and that creates better competition. And those lower level teams that are kind of, in the back of the fleet, they start seeing increased results and better results. And I think it's kind of infectious. And then they just want to get better and better. And then the better the bottom of the fleet gets, the whole competition and racing is better all around. So it's fun for everyone. So I think the more you can share, it just makes it, you know, people coming back every day, and, you know, season in, season out. A lot of people don't know, like, sometimes you don't know at the highest level what kind of, you know, what numbers are they using, what are they actually, what do these graphs mean, and you know, until the America's Cup, I didn't know either. And then you start looking at these graphs and things, and you're like, I don't even know what this is saying. And then they explain it to you, and you're like, oh, that makes sense. So, and that's trickling down to the stuff like the Great Lakes 52s and other fleets.
Just a couple last questions. The
Yep.
20 America's Cup was used sails and did not use wings. Is there, why wouldn't they have used wings, which are more efficient?
You'll have to ask Team New Zealand about that
Okay.
one.
Okay.
I don't know. I think the wings are great. They're very efficient, but the problem with the wings is once you put them up, the boat's ready to go sailing. So you
Okay.
have to be able to dock them or have them on a mooring. They're like kind of like a bucking bronco that they're wanting to go. So if you're in a shifty location and the wind shifts, the boat's wanting to sail away. Whereas, you know, obviously with soft sails, we didn't put the soft sails up until we were out head to wind with a chase boat, and it was very controlled.
Okay.
But it was definitely a long process. I think that the reason why they originally said that they wanted soft sails is so that you could keep the boats in the water overnight, which that's never going to happen in the Cup. The boats are in the shed every day anyways to get repaired or just gone over. But I think they would just want to be able to keep the boats at the dock and just have it a little bit safer. But it's definitely a major undertaking to figure out the double skin mainsail system.
Did sailing cats teach you to be a better monohull sailor, or did monohull sailing teach you to understand cats better?
Oh man,
It's a hard question.
that's a hard one. I just think the monohull sailing, you know, the feel you have, light air and moving slowly around the boats, that translates. At the end of the day, a boat's a boat, and they all have their, you know, their common traits. So you kind of take that, and then with the catamarans, there was a little different because you had two hulls and running across the tramp, and it added a whole different dimension that I wasn't used to. And then I think that the speed from the catamarans helped me be a better sailor at the higher speeds on the monohulls, which at the end of, you know, the higher speeds in the monohulls didn't really come close to the catamaran speed. So you weren't you were a lot more calm at the higher level of the monohull or higher speeds in the monohull sailing.
Last question. I've asked this of all of the top guys that we've had a chance to interview. What makes you a good sailor?
I don't know. I think what makes me a good sailor is first, like, you know, hard work. You know, hard worker. You always want to get there. If boat calls at 9 o'clock, you get there at 8:45 or 8:30. You get there early. And then, you know, I've done enough of it where I think I'm pretty comfortable with doing the bow and making sure the sails go up and down properly. And you know, we don't really have that many mistakes. You know, a good example is the quantum racing. Is we have really good boat handling, I think, and with the guys, and it's obviously not just me. I'm just one small piece in that whole group, but everyone's very good. So that the boat handling is very clean and crisp. But I think that I learn from my mistakes and identify what's wrong, and I fix it and try not to, you know, the whole goal is not to make the same mistake twice. And if you can do that, I think you're in good shape. So I think that the hard work and trying to be mistake free is one of my better, I guess, traits of sailing. I don't know. It's kind of hard to talk about myself. I'm not a big, I don't really do that. So it's a hard question to answer, but I think if you were to ask other people, that would probably be the answer that you'd get.
Paul Kerr told us a couple of weeks ago that it was his feel and being able to see things quicker than those around him.
Yep.
And I thought that was such a good answer, because at the level you're at, that's certainly true of almost any professional athlete. It's, you know, when you get to your level, Curtis Florence, again, a pro who was on the hooligan guys, he said, you know, he was a great amateur. Then he got to the pros and he said, there's 100 guys just like me.
Yep.
And it's more than
I sailed against Curtis a lot, and Curtis is awesome. And yeah, we kind of had the same path. amateurs in the far 40s, and then turn professional. And it's fun. But there are 100 other guys in your spot.
No, and I appreciate we interviews yesterday. We interviewed Brad Boston, and same kind of thing. Real humble guys like you. You guys are great sailors because you have great talent, and I think that's part of it. And all the folks who had a chance, like Dave Irish, had a chance to have some influence and mentor. The process becomes part of that formula. Last question, and that is, what's the rest of the summer look like?
Right now I'm in Newport. We have the M32 North Americans going on this weekend, and I'm sailing with Bill Rue and his boat and his team Pursuit. So it should be a good week. We're here early and do a couple more days of training prior to the event. The whole goal is gearing up for the M32 Worlds in Cascais, Portugal in October. So I have that going on now, and then I'll go back up to Harbor Springs after this for more of the WindQuest sailing, the Great Lakes 52s, and then Europe for the Super Series.
Man, this has been such a cool interview and such a good time. I really appreciate spending some time with us, and I can't tell you how it's been fun. Not every interview is great, but this is one of those that has been really fun talking to you.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, and thanks for what you do for the sport. It's great to get these interviews out there and kind of show people what you can do and what's out there for them in the sport. So really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
I want to thank Matt Cassidy for coming and talking with us. It was really a fun chance to talk to somebody at the level he's obtained. And I think if you listen carefully, you learn a little bit about Matt's personality too. He's obviously back in Newport, but he's just a good guy. And I think it was a great interview. Up next is Connor Corgard talking about his 470 championship. And that's another exciting conversation. So we'll be back in just a couple seconds.
Yeah. We're talking with Connor Corgard. It was just won a national championship on 470, and we're going to get into that briefly a little bit. First of all, stacking up the cords of wood with nationals and North American championships, this has got to be certainly one of the highlights on your mantle for sure. So congratulations, and I appreciate you spending some time with us.
Thank you. Yeah, it was an amazing time here in Milwaukee. I came over for the weekend with one of our training partners out of Oyster Bay and on Long Island in New York, and been training hard. We're pretty new to the boat and stuff, but it was a fantastic time, and we had an absolute hoot sailing, great conditions. And
is Milwaukee a great place to stage a national championship? I mean, obviously it's like Michigan.
Yeah, it was absolutely glamour. It was really nice because there's actually kind of a fleet of kind of the old boys, we call it old boys and girls here in the Midwest, in kind of based out of Milwaukee, a bit in like Carlisle, down in Chicago area. But there's and they're all kind of these people who are just gung-ho about the 470, which is awesome. And to me, that's what the class is. That's what the core of the class is. And that's how you really grow a class, is pay attention to the culture and the core of the class. And so it was really nice to actually have a national championship with those people, because they were the ones who really run things and make it go round. And so for us to show up, it was absolutely awesome to just have this glamour event, glamour conditions, perfect training venue, and everyone was so welcoming. It was really awesome.
You had a chance to visit with us last year when you were at Crescent, and just kind of talking about your career and kind of going through it. So, checking back in and having won the national championship, which is the picture sitting behind me, I think is pretty remarkable. So it certainly helps the resume as you're trying to work your way towards, being that pro sailor, making a career of this thing. So national championships is a pretty cool deal. I mean, you got pretty excited about it.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no, we're definitely pumped about it. We're trying to take it all in stride. It was definitely sweet. But we've got a long way to go. We definitely have some pretty big ambitions. We train a lot with several different teams out in New York and Long Island. One of our training partners, who's definitely been at it for longer than we have. We're just about a month old as a team. Is actually just headed over to Europe, so they weren't able to compete. And they definitely knock us one in practice. So. But it's been absolutely amazing. We came over with another one of our teammates here, it was awesome because our team was able to go 1-2 in the event, and they did really well as well. So it was really fun.
You had some pretty good talent in the boat with you as well for your partner. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I've just teamed up with someone, Mimi Alcazindar, which she's actually was a dual citizen. She was brought up kind of in the British system, but also sailed a little bit. I knew her in youth sailing from our connection at Minnetonka Yacht Club in Minnesota, and she would spend summers there, and we kind of knew of each other because she was several years younger than I in our youth careers. But we always kind of kept tabs on each other, and she went on to have an absolutely spectacular youth career, winning some world championships and European championships in the 29er class for the UK. But since then, she has decided she wants to represent the US at the Olympics. And so we've decided to team up and go for it in the 470 and go get a medal for our country.
Next Summer Olympics is 24, 26.
Correct. So 2024 is Paris, and the sailing will be in Marseille. And we're looking with a long-term outlook, Los Angeles 2028 as well, with sailing in Long Beach, and even Brisbane 2032. So we've got big plans for the long run, and we're definitely in it for the long haul, where right now it's just all about time in the boat, and we're brand new. We're not even, we like to say, we're not even infants in the boat yet, barely. Right. And so we're just learning every day, and it's really fun right now because it's kind of this honeymoon period, we call it, and it's every day it's so easy to learn something. And there's definitely going to be, harder times ahead and stuff, but that's the challenge. That's the fun of it. So
are you crew and she's skipper or flip?
Yeah, so I'm crew. I'm not super tall. I'm 5'11", but yeah, I'm definitely too big to drive, I would say. And she's a driver.
Okay.
So it works out really well because she's got a lot of talent in the back of the boat, and I've kind of always driven, but I'm quite acrobatic as well, I guess. And so I've always kind of wanted to crew more so, and I think it fits my mindset more so. So it's been a fun challenge, kind of transforming myself into that.
Kind of a two-part question. First, how much time does it take in a boat to get comfortable? Then the follow-up to that question is, how much time does it take to get in the boat in terms of practice, hour-wise, to get good, where you feel comfortable, where you're past the, okay, we got this now kind of thing? We can start to look at going faster.
Definitely a lot of time. I think it
weeks, months,
yeah, months to years.
Okay.
And I think it's something that is absolutely necessary when you want to get to the top level. When you have experience in a lot of different boats, you can start to draw on things from different boats, and it's fairly easy to hop in and make a boat go, I think, pretty fast, or to get it around the race course really well. But in order to do something that's, I think in any major class, a top 5 in the world or a top even 20 in the world, depending on the fleet size, it's something that you have to spend countless hours in the boat, to where it just becomes an extension of your body.
Right.
And our coach likes to say, we carry the boat around the race course like a suitcase, like you're running through the airport and you're late for your flight, and you have to carry it through the airport, and you're not sailing the boat around, you're running with it through the race course. And I think that's a good analogy, because it's like you're nonstop working to keep the boat moving fast, but it's something that you have to know absolutely how to do without thinking about it, and that just takes countless hours. So it's all about time in the boat.
Is videotape part of the practice sessions? Do you use videotape much?
Definitely. We use a lot of different techniques. So we're both Mimi and I are quite visual learners. And so we try to video a lot, and get video off of other people, a chase boat or a coach. And we chuck GoPros in the boat. Right now we're not even, like, we've done a little bit of that, but we're at a point where a lot of it we can just talk through, because we feel when it's off or something, and we're so green to the boat. But it's definitely a tool that we utilize a lot, and it's super helpful when we can go back and analyze different different pieces of our races and stuff like that.
Most of us know about 420s. A 470, just briefly explain it. It's basically a 420 on steroids. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, pretty much. It's a bit longer, so it's 50 centimeters longer, 470 centimeters long, about 17 feet, and it's a lot more kind of high powered. So you got more sail area. The foils are a bit more efficient. Still just the crew on the trapeze, but the boat is designed to just power upwind, reach really well, and send it downwind. They're really rocky and rolly, so it's really fun. They're super kinetic boats, and it's one of the funnest things sailing them. And we had this on the weekend is a lot of waves, and so it's so fun because you can just sit there, especially as a crew, and just smack hammer the kite to pump it, and the boat just takes off down a wave. And it's one of the greatest feelings I think I have in any boat, and it's my favorite feeling in any boat, definitely.
Dumb question. 470s are faster than 420s, given everything being equal, right?
Yeah. For the like most conditions, yes. Like very rarely are they slower. So
Right. Is that basically more sail area? Is that part of the reason?
yeah,
Okay.
pretty much. More sail area, more water line, so you just truck upwind a bit better. But yeah.
How many? There are either 14 or 16 categories of boats, classes in Olympics. Am I correct? Am I correct on that? Does that sound right?
I think there were 10 at one point. It keeps changing so much. But yeah, there's I guess wind foil 470 has gone mixed now. So mandatory mixed sex, and then so you have 3 there. You have both men's and women's kite foil, that's 5. And then you have laser or Ilka 6 and 7s, that's 7. 49er and FX, which is 9, and then I guess last one would be NACRA foiling multi-hull.
So no keel boats to speak of.
No keel boats.
And I'm just from a novice's standpoint, why no keel boats? Just because it's too big?
I think the costs of it, they've done that in the past. They used to have the Star class, was a long-standing Olympic class, and still a really healthy international class, as well as they used to have kind of women's keelboat. They had match racing. In 2012 they tried, but I think one of the reasons it's kind of never really lasted is the cost gets a lot higher, and B, it's harder to kind of exact that the boats are the same, and that it comes down arguably to the sailor. And in my opinion, I think anytime you have kind of something that's going to be a bigger boat, it becomes less down to the athlete, and kind of how much of really what they've put into their body. And in my personal opinion, that's kind of what the Olympics is about, is how much you can push yourself to be faster, higher, stronger, not necessarily the boat to be faster, higher, stronger. And I think that's still the case in dinghies, but it's a lot more physical of a game.
Well, good. Listen, I appreciate you spending some time with us. You're in Milwaukee as we speak to you, so have what's left of a great summer, and thanks for checking in.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, we'll be training here for a few weeks, I think, just because the conditions are so great. We're off to Europe and Israel here in a month, and we'll have a good time at that. But we'll give it a crack, and definitely be new. I don't think we'll be quite seeing the success necessarily that we saw this past weekend, but we got a lot to learn, and it should be a great time.
Thanks, Connor.
Congratulations to Connor Corgard for winning that national championship on a 470. Hope you understand the difference now between those normal 420s we're used to in the 470s. I think that was a great conversation. Up next is a little bit of information about the Catalina Association, the Clinton River Catalina Association. They're going to talk a little bit about cruising, and we'll be back with those guys in just a couple seconds. We're
going to cover an interesting subject that we don't usually talk to on Inside Great Lakes Sailing. We're going to talk a little bit about cruising, and with us is Glenn Ellison, who was the Commodore of the Clinton River Catalina Association, Paul Krukowski, former past Commodore, and Ken Malloy, a Vice Commodore. And we're going to talk a little bit about cruising. Now, the name Clinton River Association, Catalina, let me get
River Catalina Association.
There you go, that acronym.
But Cruising Association may better describe us right now.
Yeah. You guys have for a long time been a Catalina organization since about the late 80s, if I'm not mistaken. 88, does that sound right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Talk a little bit about the organization. You're expanding your membership base, and this is kind of a sort of a little bit of a conversation about maybe looking for new members who don't necessarily have Catalina boats.
Correct.
I'll let Paul go first.
Oh, you will. Okay. Yeah, we started in 1988. At one time, we had 59 members, as I recall. About a third of them were just cruisers only. Thursday nights, we had Thursday nights on Lake St. Clair. That was the Catalina race night. We'd have up to 30 boats out there at a time, easily racing, sometimes more. We also hosted 4 Catalina, the 27 Nationals twice, and the 30 Nationals twice. So we were definitely in the loop. Now, the Clinton River Catalina Association was the very first association that allowed all Catalinas of any size in the group. Up until then, every size had its own club in every region.
Wow.
So it was very complicated. And Fred Locke brought it all together and said, no, we want all Catalinas. And we got a lot of resistance about it for a while. And then eventually it got accepted by Catalina, the Catalina main sheet. That's their big newsletter, or actually it's a magazine. Comes out 3 times a year, 4 times a year. I don't remember. I get it, but I don't remember. And so anyway, we were the first, and then eventually other groups did the same thing when they got wind of this, and they said, let's increase our membership base, and that was the whole thing.
Yeah.
And eventually it happened in New York, it happened out in California, and then it just all popping up all over the place. So we were forerunners. Yeah, go ahead. You have a question?
No, I was just gonna say a lot of the sport boats that were built in the 1980s during that crunch when everybody was building boats. That's essentially what organizations like yours are a part of that process. I don't think that's a secret. Glenn, talk briefly about what a rendezvous. If you guys get together, essentially your organization is built for camaraderie and friendship and being able to spend some time sailing, certainly, but I think it's more towards maybe meeting people of the same persuasion. Is that fair?
Oh, yes, definitely. It's a passion. Everybody that has a sailboat now that likes to cruise and meet up with fun people, and they're a fun person themselves, we're very interested in having them join and look into and join our organization. It's only $20 a month.
A year.
A year.
We're not raising.
Well, after being on TV. So, okay, $20 a year. And we meet. In the past, we were having approximately 2 rendezvous a month, and we'd like to get back to that or more. We meet every Wednesday on Lake St. Clair at CR1 at about 1 o'clock. Paul leads us out on a cruise where we just wave at everybody and we have a good time for a couple hours. And sometimes that's backed up by meeting at a bar or getting a burger somewhere, sometimes not. But we also have the meetings and the get-togethers. And usually a get-together will include, hors d'oeuvres and then some drinks. And then we'll decide if we're going to go out to dinner. In the past, we found that there's so many hors d'oeuvres, we don't usually do the dinner because we're all full. I want to mention that on August 27th, we are going to have a meetup at Metropolitan Beach.
Okay.
Everybody is welcome. Come over, look for our flag. Come over and say hi. We'll be glad to talk to you. We're going to be in the North Marina, which is the back marina. Now, that does not have electricity. It doesn't have running water. You're welcome to tie up in the South Marina, the first marina, but you'll have to make reservations through the state of Michigan to do that. Just look for us, and we'll be glad to meet you.
Glenn, maybe let me ask this question of Ken. Ken, talk a little bit about trying to get the word out, and if somebody's interested, where do they find that information?
Yeah, we have a Facebook page, but we've been keeping it private. A lot of the members wanted it private. We're talking about making it a public page. I'll do something so that it's easy to get to our Facebook page. But I've been posting out on the Sinclair Sailors page, our information, announcing what rendezvous we're having, what we're planning for the year, what's coming up next. And then what people have been doing and what you did is sent me a message, commented on the page, and then sent me a message, and we hooked up later, and I got you linked into our private page. But I'll get something set up so it's easier for people to find a public page about our, at least post all the planned rendezvous and when we're getting together. And I guess the point is that in Sinclair, Lake St. Clair, there's a lot of different venues. I think I was telling you earlier, I'm originally from Southern California. And if you sail out of Newport Beach, you can go to Catalina and it'll take you all day to get there. You might make it down to Ensenada in a couple days. And if you got a month or two, you can go to Hawaii. But the nice thing about Lake St. Clair are the places you can get in a couple hours. So that's why we have at least every month one meetup at Metro Beach, because that's a nice central location people can find. Some people, maybe they can't sail there, they'll bring their land yacht or they'll bicycle over and get together and have some hors d'oeuvres and get a barbecue going. Glenn's got a portable tent, he puts that up, and we fly our flags and put on the tunes, get out the adult beverages, and have a good time.
Boat size doesn't matter for your group. And here's a question for all three of you. I belong to a club where 80% of the folks race and 20% of the folks cruise. I happen to be a cruiser who covers racing, but sometimes I feel like a cheap second cousin when I talk about cruising. And I just wonder if you guys felt the same way sometimes when you talk to your friends.
I think I can best describe cruising as half the fun is getting there. Sailing is it. I mean, that's the fun. And then you get to where you're going and you sit down, you have a few drinks and laughs and talk about what happened while you're coming over, right, and what happened last week, shoot the stuff, and then again, cruising is what it's all about. If you love sailing, cruising, it's got to be in your blood.
And Paul's Wednesday afternoon sails on Lake St. Clair. They're a lot of fun because nobody is really telling you which way you have to turn. We're just all watching each other and we're chasing the wind, as the saying goes. And you know when you're heading to a certain destiny, the wind is always going to be on your nose.
It always is.
But this allows us to go out there and use our crafts the way they're designed to be used. Have fun. Nobody's racing. Yeah, I got the slowest boat on the lake. So we're just out there waving at everybody and having a great time.
I'm sure if you and I raced, it would be an interesting race as to who would be the slowest. And I'm pretty sure I have the slowest boat on the lake. And one thing I've learned from the show and getting around racers is that when you cross the finish line with your motor on, as a sarcastic salute to the racers, it turns out that the PROs don't like that very much. We stopped racing because they thought that was kind of, disingenuous. And I thought, you could give me the biggest penalty in the world, I'm last anyway. So it just means I'm last by a bigger margin. So it doesn't change anything. So
I heard of a race once where the first boat across the finish line was disqualified. That sounded interesting to me.
For real. The camaraderie is part of the process. And just give us a typical, you're going to head to Metro. Everybody shows up at a particular time. And again, I'm guessing it's just probably sitting around the campfire and playing cards and just doing like anything else would be. Is that a kind of a typical night?
Yeah, in the past we would play miniature golf, or a lot of times somebody would be assigned of the job of hosting the cruise, and one of their responsibilities was to come up with a game, and it might range anything from flying a kite to some kind of Olympic event.
Lawn bowling or something.
Yeah. So it was always interesting and a little bit of a challenge to try to come up with a new design for a function. But we had a lot of fun doing things like that.
I think one thing I'd like to comment on is my wife really likes it. If you're in a sailing club and it's racing and you're out with the guys and you're going out for beers afterwards and you're coming home late at night, maybe the wife doesn't feel like it's such a family sport. But in cruising, our wives love getting together, catching up on things, trading stories, talking as they will. And so it's fun for the whole family, so to speak. And I don't know about you, Greg, but I have the saying, happy wife, so it's nice to get the women folk together too and have a social activity.
I'm not married, but I get your point.
Maybe that's why.
Happy for you, right?
I have a longtime companion, so I get your point. Just briefly before to end this, and this I guess is my last question. The pandemic has created so much havoc for so many things, and I can't believe it hasn't had an effect on you guys. Is the pandemic been pretty devastating to the group as far as just being able to get together and do the kinds of things, which is maybe why you're doing a membership drive, so to speak? At this point?
2020, we got together on our boats and waved at each other.
Yeah.
We anchor out in Black Lake and anchor together, but we don't really get together.
I think Paul can best talk to that because he had the helm during the pandemic and did a good job of keeping the club together.
Yeah,
Well,
we did.
thank you for that. But, yeah, it was a challenge. Yeah, pandemic, like anybody else, it ruined everything, And even now, people are still afraid to come together. It's a built-in psychological thing now. It's like
Right.
Stay away from everybody,
Yeah.
That's starting to change, thank goodness.
We were doing a number of, in the past, we were doing a number of rendezvous in Canada. Of course, that's all shut down now. So it's a little bit of a challenge trying to figure out where we're going to go. But we're doing a pretty good job this year. And next year, I think we'll do even a better job.
Talk about what we do over the winter.
Over the winter, we have different cruises, not cruises, but different meets. We've done a lot of the Henry Ford, whether it's the Mansion or the Ford Tours, Greenfield Village, etc., things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a few others, I can't remember what the hell they were.
We got together at that sports bar and we had to
Oh,
play
yeah.
the-
Mount Clemens, yeah.
yeah. So
Did you guys get out of Lake St. Clair at all?
Get what?
Get out of Lake St. Clair? Do you get to Huron? Do you get to Erie? Do you go longer trips at all?
Yeah, we have in the past, but
we've been talking about Lexington that keeps coming up. I don't probably won't happen
We did
this year.
some Lake Erie in the past too, right?
Yeah, we went down to Putin Bay a couple times.
yeah, Putin Bay,
I think part of the cruising.
I went to Cedar Point from Putin Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think part of the camaraderie of cruising, especially longer distances, is having, that companionship going around it. And there's nothing wrong with sailing by yourself, but you get someplace and there's some friends, it makes it makes the weekend a whole lot more fun. I don't think that's a secret to anybody. So
That's very true, yes.
So if I'm looking to, at the end of this, we'll have up the information. They can contact you guys and go through the process. There's no website, but there's at least a contact information and maybe an email. If you'll send me whatever you want to put up for a publication. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you guys, they can do that. The next event coming up is the 27th. And as Glenn, you pointed out, if you're going to go, make sure you check with the folks at Metro Beach as to which marina you want to spend some time in, because one has electricity and water and the other one does not.
Right. The one that has electricity and water, you have to make reservations through their site, which is
DNR site.
DNR site. The North Marina, which is the one in the back, that one is they treat it like the seawall. You just pull in, find an empty wall, pull in, and tie up. But again, there's no electricity or water at that. But it's also only $20 compared to like $40.
Okay. Am I missing anything?
I don't
I don't
think
think I
so.
can think of, but
Okay.
send us for sailors.
Well, I thank you guys. This is the second interview. Well, I should point out that we don't have bloopers, but we've already done this once, and an idiot that is interviewing you forgot to hit the record button. So we'll leave that in for posterity, because once in a while you make an editing mistake, and it is what it is. But hopefully we get a chance to meet with you guys, and the best of luck in building your membership back. And I can tell you from having been at, I will call it Markley, but it's now Lembrecht, having spent a lot of time there, this is a really good group of guys and a really fun organization from what I used to observe from the outside. But it's hopefully you guys have a great opportunity on the 27th, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Looking for you.
Yeah, right back at you.
I want to thank Connor and Matt for talking to us a little bit about pro sailing and national championships, and headed towards great things both at the Olympics and World Cup. And I think in Matt's case, headed over to the Super Series in the Mediterranean on some 52s. If you're interested in cruising, certainly check out the Clinton River Catalina Association. I think it'll be worth your while. And find Facebook. I think you'll find them on the Facebook platform. So we hope you enjoyed the show. Take heed that we get some good weather here in August and September, and we'll see you next time.